Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tyler King here with a new episode of NuReview. Today, I will be doing a review of the debut album by Desperate Journalist. Desperate Journalist. So, Desperate Journalist is the debut album by Desperate Journalist. They are a four-piece kind of post-punky jangle poppy band out of uh, out of London. This album was released on February 2nd, 2015. It was the follow-up to the band's 2013 Cristina EP, which was titled after the song Cristina, which appears on this album. And it was also released after a couple of singles had been released. One was called Organ, which does not appear here. The other was Happening, which does appear here. The lineup for the band is Joe Bevan, unfortunately I don't know how you pronounce it, on vocals. Um, Rob Hardy on guitar. You get Simon Drowner on bass and Kaz Hellbent on drums. The album is released through Fierce Panda Records. The album opens with Control, and right out of the gate, we are treated to this ferocious blast of guitar, bass, and drums. The guitars are shimmering, the bass is throbbing, the drums are driving and pounding, and they lead us right into this very bright and shimmering guitar line that's played by Rob, which leads us into the first verse as Joe sings, "I'm so happy we're here, just ecstatic to be here." And the vocals are delivered just like in complete deadpan, like she would rather be anywhere else in the world. The song drives on and it builds up until finally we get another blast of instrumentation, much like how the song opened up. Joe now singing "Open the Vein," "I'll take the reins," "It's like a hole in your head," "I'm thoroughbred." Everything about this song works as an opening song. From the all too short guitar solo to the end, towards the end, to Joe's kind of pre-chorus cry of help as she sings, "I can't hold, I can't control." And this song, I think, deserves to be in the pantheon of great opening songs. The next song is "Oh," which opens with this single guitar stab, and this very tom-heavy drum intro, which, once the song starts proper, we do get a slower song than the opening track, and here the lyrics are a bit more direct this time around. And one of my favorite things about this album is the mixing and the way that it's been mastered, and these two elements of post-production really come together, especially on a song like "Oh." At sixes and sevens, "Your car is like heaven," sings Joe in the first verse, and later she makes the observation, "The LCD display freeze-framed a mile away." The guitar line as she sings the second verse especially sticks out, as do the various "oh no's" that Joe sings throughout the song, and this is another sublime, perfect song. Next we get "Cristina," which is the title track of the band's 2013 EP. And I initially was not a very big fan of this song when I first heard it, but as I have continued to listen to the band and this album in particular, this song really has jumped out to me as one of the band's best songs. It's another exercise in frantic instrumental introductions, kind of like Control. Here we get the first introduction of acoustic guitar, and the lyrics here seem to be dealing with some kind of reunion of friends, I think, of some sorts. Joe actually pleading with Cristina, "Can you help me? I'm embittered and hitting out." And just as a side note, as you know, as great as this album is, and this is a really great album, I do also recommend that you listen to the EP that the song is culled from, because you know, like this album, pretty much every song on that EP is a perfect song. There's only 4 songs on it, and you know, just as an aside, I highly recommend you listen to it if you're going to listen to this album. The vocal melody here also is probably one of the most memorable ones on the album, and we're 3 songs in, and nothing so far has been less than excellent. The next song is Hesitate, which would eventually be released as a single from the album. Here, the song opens with a very simple bass line before it's joined by guitar. And suddenly the guitar's volume kind of explodes outward, and we get another more frantic introduction. But once the song settles down, we're treated to the slowest song that we've heard so far, and also the most restrained song that we've heard so far, but a ballad it is not. The highlight of the song to me is going to be Joe's sustained "ohs" before the chorus kicks in, and you know, again, it's this very erupting chorus as Joe sings, "And he who hesitates is lost, but I will keep my fingers crossed." And we do again get a very memorable sparse guitar line going on during the second verse, and it's easy to see why this song was released as a single. I am not as big a fan of it as the previous 3, but it still is a pretty darn good song. The next song is Remainder, and even though it opens up with another very bombastic introduction, much like Control, once it settles, it again is a more restrained song, much like Hesitate. The constant reverbed guitar is incredibly pretty here, and there's a moment when it meets this strummed acoustic guitar that just creates a moment of sheer bliss. Simon Drowner's bass is particularly noticeable here in the song, as are the tom rolls that Kaz Hellbent does during the pre-choruses. The vocal delivery is particularly heartfelt and comes to a head in this dreamy chorus as Joe sings, "'Cause you aren't half the man you think you are." I mean, damn. You know, what a line. I mean, that's one of my favorite single lines on the entire album. And I know I continue to use the word pretty when describing certain elements or tones of this album, but whenever I hear this song, this is what I think of. I think that the artwork here really helps to reflect this song in particular. Now, next we have Distance, which was originally a B-side to the organ single, and you know, the song there was incredibly sparse and incredibly bare. The rhythm section on the original version was just a very basic drum machine, although here we do actually get live drumming from Kaz. This version opens up with some light guitar feedback and a very simple kick and snare acoustic drum beat played underneath it, but soon the guitar line playing in the left channel rises up in volume, and you know, again the entire band comes in, and this is definitely the slowest song on the album so far. It's also one of the most subdued and subtle songs on the entire record. You know, the guitar is barely audible in verses. Simon's bass is doing most of the work here. And like on Remainder, the vocal melody and the way that the vocals are delivered is particularly gut-wrenching, particularly the final verse, as Joe sings "The Longest Height," "The Wide and Freezing Transatlantic Night," "The Sentiments I Never Should Have Hid," "The Fall of My Eyelids." The instrumentation then picks up, the guitar becoming this subdued frenzy as Joe just continually chants "I've lost you" over and over and over again as the song finally comes to a close. And next we have Nothing, which opens with a more, I would call it a restrained blast of noise. The guitar and bass here are playing perfectly off of each other, and the drumming is kind of all cymbals and snare hits before it all finally calms down. The song reminds me of Remainder in that lyrically they both kind of share the same sentiment. Joe is singing lines like "No one cares about your good intent," and during the chorus she's singing "Deserve is nothing, you deserve nothing" to some unknown antagonist. I enjoy this song, don't get me wrong, but I feel like, when I listen to this album, I would rather hear the songs that are immediately before and immediately after this one. And the next song is Happening, which, as I previously mentioned, was a single from the album, and it's kind of the most obvious. Also, for me, Happening has probably the most sing-along chorus of any of the songs on here. The chorus here really just simply being "the highway happening, happening, the bed's empty, and the silent spring." It's also one of the shortest songs on here. It barely runs under 2 minutes and 45 seconds in its length. Instrumentally, it's also very straight ahead. Simon is doing most of the work. His bass playing is driving the verses along, but then when the chorus comes, Rob's guitar just kind of explodes outward, and it makes the chorus that much more powerful in its delivery. This song is very short, it is very sweet, it is very to the point, and I would go so far as to say it's one of my favorite songs on this album. And the next song is Eulogy, and Eulogy opens up very abruptly with I think 2 or 3 snare hits, and immediately Joe begins singing "So farewell, the asinine ground swells." The bass here is especially driving and punchy. There is some interesting and intricate guitar playing going on during the verses. And one of the more tender and softer moments on here is right before the first chorus. We very faintly hear Joe singing "I don't think I understand," to which she kind of replies, "I'll never understand." I also love the various ahs before each chorus. The song is one of the more punchy ones on the album. I have a particular soft spot for Rob's all too short guitar solo during the bridge towards the end of the song. "Calm Before the Storm," that leads into, in which Kaz is just dominating, these floor toms before the chorus, the last chorus comes in and just kind of punches you right in the face. The next song is Heartbeats, and Heartbeats is one of the slower songs on the album. Again, it has a very dreamy feeling, which I think helps to evoke this, beautiful album artwork, mostly due to the return of the acoustic guitar. There are some flourishes of electric guitar during the verses, which becomes more dominating in the choruses as Joe sings "I can't bear your heartbeats now that I hear them." The drums are also especially noticeable in this song. The bass is a little bit more subdued this time around, though. Unfortunately, like the song Nothing, with this song, Heartbeats, I would much rather, unfortunately, hear the songs that are immediately before and immediately after it. I think the Heartbeats does have some great moments on it, and it is a very good song, but I would rather hear the last song, which is Cement. The album really does close on a more somber note with this song. The acoustic guitar is very prominent here. The electric guitar, the bass, the drums, they all lead us into what I would argue is, again, the most pretty song on this album. And this is an album where half the songs are really fucking pretty songs. There are very gentle guitar notes that are played throughout the song. Joe's vocal delivery is just ripe with, heartbreak and, for lack of a better term, desperation. There's a very powerful bridge section with what almost sounds like a lute being strummed frantically before everything kind of drops away except for the acoustic guitar as Joe sings a garden groan, a dial tone. The song has a sentimentality to it that is absent from pretty much every other song on the album, and I think that helps to make this one so memorable and such a powerful and strong album closer. With the final declaration of "This Small Life, perfect like cement," there's a final strum, and then bang! That's it. That's the end of the album, and that's Desperate Journalist. Shit, what what an album this is. This is an album that I found very shortly after it had come out. I learned about it through a website called Rate Your Music. It's kind of this site where you go on and you rate your music. And it lets you know like top rated albums of the year, and this was one of the top rated post-punk albums of 2015. And I remember listening to it, and it really stuck out from a lot of the more recent post-punk bands like Eagles, in that it all sounded incredibly professional. It's an incredibly put together album. It's an incredibly mixed and mastered and edited and performed album. And it came along at a time in my life a couple of years ago when I really needed to hear an album like this, both in terms of composition as well as in terms of the lyrics. Without going too far into it, this album really did speak a lot to me at the time, and it still does. It's an album I come back to incredibly often, and whenever people ask me for music recommendations, especially newer bands, Desperate Journalist is the band that I always tend to start out recommending to other people. I think that there is a bite and there is a kick to these songs, especially something like Control or Eulogy or Happening, but then we get songs like Cement or Distance, songs that are so heartbreaking in their composition. And I feel like there's a song on here for anyone who is a fan not only of the older post-punk and jangle-pop bands that clearly influenced Desperate Journalist, bands like The Cure and Susie and the Banshees and The Smiths, but also really any fan of alternative music. Of course, there are always going to be comparisons drawn between a new band and an old band, and here it seems like the common comparison for Desperate Journalist is the Smiths. I particularly don't really hear it. However, that being said, I'm not the world's biggest Smiths fan. Despite the fact I love my 80s music, I'm not a big Smiths fan by any stretch of the imagination. And I would go so far as to say I like Desperate Journalist a lot more than I like the Smiths. Granted, Desperate Journalist's output up to today, March 2017, early March 2017, is this album, the Cristina EP, a handful of singles that were released from this album. They had an EP titled Good Luck that came out last year, and over the last couple of months they've been teasing us with singles that are going to be on their new album Grow Up, which is coming out towards the end of the month. Songs like Resolution, um, and Hollow. So I'm very much looking forward to the second album by this band. I feel like I've already talked too much, but I mean, I know that I said it on my, I've said it with reviews of, Gary Newman and David Bowie and Cocteau Twins and, the whole gamut of bands that I tend to have reviewed so far, but I really do feel strongly that this is an album that really should be out there. I feel like this band is probably the best band that you've never heard of up to this point, and I have nothing but praise to sing about this album. Um, Least favorite songs on here are probably going to be Nothing, Heartbeat, and I don't know. Let's see what else on the track was. I guess Hesitate, if I had to choose. I do really like Hesitate though, but I gotta choose three least favorite songs. That one just happens to be one of them. I'm sorry. Um, Favorite songs. I mean, shit, this whole album has amazing, amazing songs on it. Sorry, I'm looking at the track list again. Control, Oh, Cristina, Distance. Fuck. Like every song on here I think is a great song. The three that I mentioned I don't think stand up like the other ones do, but fuck. I mean, it's very rare that a debut album is this good. And I would go so far as to give this album a very strong 9 out of 10. Um, I know it's a little bit uncommon for me to do a review of something on here that is so recent, but this band is so indebted, I think, to the post-punk explosion of the late 70s and early 80s. Um, there's even a bit of Joy Division thrown in here to the mix, that I don't think that it is necessarily, wrong of me to do a review of an album that has come out so recently, especially when it's an album that I feel so strongly about. Um, yeah, that's it. That's my review for Desperate Journalist. So, what do you think? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Have you heard of this album? Have you heard this band? If you've heard this band, please let me know. I'm looking for other fans. Um, do you agree that my favorite songs are your favorite songs? That my least favorite songs are your least favorite songs? Leave any and all criticism in the comment box below. I know that they have a new album coming out very soon, Grow Up, which is also going to be on Fierce Panda Records, and yes, you can expect a review of that as soon as I've got it in my hands and I've listened to it a couple of times. But in the meantime, this is Tyler King with NuReview, Desperate Journalist, self-titled 2015 album. An incredibly solid 9 out of 10. One of the best debut albums I've ever heard. Ever. So this is Tyler King with NuReview. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time.